Every time the Federal Reserve prints money, they tell you it's to save the economy. But the economy they're saving isn't yours. Since 2008, the Fed has created over $12 trillion out of thin air. $12 trillion. Did your bank account grow? Did your salary double? Did your rent go down? No. But the stock market tripled. Billionaire wealth exploded. And your grocery bill, it went up 40%. Tonight, we follow every dollar the Fed printed and show you exactly whose pockets it ended up in. Because this isn't economics. This is the greatest wealth transfer in human history, and nobody is talking about it. Most people imagine money printing as a giant machine stamping dollar bills. The reality is far more elegant and far more dangerous. As the banking dynasty patriarch once put it, give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. Here is how it actually works. The Federal Reserve opens a computer terminal and types a number. That's it. No gold backing it, no productivity behind it, just digits on a screen. They use those freshly created digits to buy government bonds and mortgage-backed securities from major banks. The banks receive billions in new money before anyone else. Between 2008 and 2014, the Fed created $3.5 trillion this way. Then, between 2020 and 2022, they created another $4.8 trillion. $8 trillion. In total, the Fed's balance sheet went from $800 billion in 2007 to nearly $9 trillion by 2022. $9 trillion created. But here is what nobody tells you. That money didn't flow evenly into the economy. It didn't reach your paycheck or your savings account. It went somewhere very specific. And that is where this story gets truly disturbing. In the 18th century, an Irish-French economist named Richard Cantillon discovered something that central banks would prefer you never learn. Whoever receives new money first benefits at everyone else's expense. This is called the Cantillon Effect, and it is the single most important economic concept they never taught you in school. Think about it like this. Imagine a small town where suddenly one person receives $1 million. Before anyone else knows about the money, that person buys property, stocks, and assets at current prices. By the time the money circulates through the town and reaches everyone else, prices have already risen. The first receiver got assets cheap. Everyone else pays more for everything. First receivers always win. Now scale that up to the entire economy. When the Fed creates trillions and hands it to Wall Street banks first, those banks buy assets before prices adjust. By the time that money trickles down to your local economy through wages and spending, inflation has already eaten your purchasing power alive. The Cantillon Effect is not a conspiracy theory. It is basic economics, and it explains everything that has happened since 2008. But who exactly are these first receivers, and what do they do with your money? That is what we need to examine next. When the Fed buys bonds from banks, those banks do not lend that money to small businesses or families. That is the story they tell Congress. Here is what actually happens. Banks take the new money and invest it in financial assets, stocks, corporate bonds, real estate investment trusts, derivatives. 1. Fed creates money from nothing. 2. Banks receive it first. 3. Banks buy financial assets. 4. Asset prices skyrocket. 5. Your groceries cost more. Between 2020 and 2021, American billionaires increased their wealth by $2.1 trillion. $2 trillion. Meanwhile, real wages for average workers actually declined when adjusted for inflation. The rich got richer because they owned the assets the new money inflated. If you are starting to see the pattern here, hit like and subscribe to keep exposing what they hide, because what comes next connects all the dots. You see, the stock market is not going up because the economy is strong. It is going up because the currency is being devalued. Currency devalued every day. And the proof of this lies in one single event that changed everything forever. In 2008, the global financial system nearly collapsed because banks had been gambling with your money. Mortgage-backed securities, credit default swaps, leveraged derivatives worth trillions. They took the risks and you paid the price. When it all came crashing down, the government had a choice. Let the banks that caused the crisis fail, or bail them out with taxpayer money. They chose the bailout. $700 billion in TARP funds went directly to the banks, but that was just the beginning. As the economist Joseph Stiglitz pointed out, we socialized the losses and privatized the gains. The Fed then launched quantitative easing. Key 1, Key 2, Key 3. Each round pumped hundreds of billions into the financial system. Socialized losses, privatized gains. Not a single major bank executive went to prison. Instead, they received record bonuses. J.P. Morgan Chase, the same bank that needed a bailout, paid out over $28 billion in bonuses that same year. The people who crashed the economy were rewarded for crashing it, and the pattern was set. When the next crisis came in 2020, they did not even hesitate to use the exact same playbook again. Now let us talk about what happens on your end of this equation. While Wall Street celebrates record highs, you are standing in a grocery store wondering why eggs cost twice what they did 3 years ago. The Consumer Price Index, the government's official measure of inflation, consistently understates the real price increases you experience every day. The methodology has been changed multiple times since the 1980, always in ways that make inflation appear lower. If we measured inflation the same way we did in 1980, today's rate would be closer to 12%, not 3%. 12%. The government changed how they measure inflation to hide how bad it really is. Your rent goes up, your health insurance goes up, your children's education costs go up, but the Fed says inflation is under control. As the Nobel laureate Milton Friedman warned decades ago, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. More money, same goods. When you increase the money supply by 40% in 2 years, but goods and services stay roughly the same, prices go up. It is not corporate greed. It is not supply chains. It is monetary policy. And the people making that policy know exactly what they are doing. Nothing demonstrates this wealth transfer more clearly than housing. In 1970, the median home price was about $23,000, and the median household income was about $10,000. That is a ratio of roughly 2.3 to 1. An average family could buy an average home with just over 2 years of income. Today, the median home price exceeds $400,000, while median household income sits around $75,000. That is a ratio of over 5 to 1. Housing ratio doubled. What changed? In 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Since then, the money supply has expanded exponentially. And where did all that excess money flow? Straight into real estate. BlackRock, Vanguard, and other institutional investors now buy entire neighborhoods with cheap money from the Fed. They are turning a generation of would-be homeowners into permanent renters. As the philosopher and economist Henry George once observed, the equal right of all men to the use of land is as clear as their equal right to breathe the air. But when printed money flows to corporations that purchase houses by the thousands, your right to own land becomes a privilege reserved for the wealthy. And housing is just one piece of a much larger illusion. They will tell you wages are going up, and technically they are right. The average hourly wage has increased from about $4 in 1970 to over $30 today. Sounds great on paper, but a rising number on your paycheck means nothing if what it buys keeps shrinking. When you adjust for real inflation, not the government's watered-down version, the average American worker today has roughly the same purchasing power as a worker in 1973. 50 years, half a century of supposed progress, and your paycheck buys the same amount of stuff. Meanwhile, CEO compensation has grown over 1,400% since 1978. Worker pay grew 12%. CEO pay grew 1,400%. As the economist Thomas Piketty documented extensively, when the rate of return on capital exceeds the rate of economic growth, inherited wealth grows faster than earned income. The system is designed so that your labor enriches those who own capital. Your labor, their wealth. This is not a bug in the system. It is the feature. And it is sustained by one mechanism above all others, the one thing that keeps the entire machine running. When the Fed prints money and keeps interest rates near zero, something insidious happens. Everything gets more expensive, but borrowing feels cheap. So what do people do? They borrow. Americans now carry over $17 trillion in household debt. Credit cards, student loans, car payments, mortgages. Every month, millions of families pay interest to the same financial institutions that received the printed money first. You borrow, they profit. Think about that cycle for a moment. The Fed creates money. Banks get it first. They buy assets. Prices go up. You cannot afford things anymore, so you borrow from the same banks. Now you are paying them interest on money they got for free. As the philosopher Noam Chomsky observed about systems of control, the smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion. And the spectrum of acceptable opinion about money never includes questioning why private banks get to create it. The entire monetary system is designed to transfer wealth upward through the mechanism of debt. Student loan debt alone exceeds $1.7 trillion. An entire generation starts adult life already owing money to the system. But this pattern is not unique to America. It is happening everywhere on Earth. The European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England, the People's Bank of China, every major central bank on Earth is running the same playbook. The Bank of Japan has been printing money for over 30 years. They now own over half of all Japanese government bonds and are one of the largest holders of Japanese stocks. A central bank literally owning the stock market. Central banks own markets. The ECB went negative on interest rates, essentially charging banks to hold cash, forcing money into assets and inflating prices across Europe. The result everywhere is identical. 1. Central bank prints money. 2. Asset prices inflate first. 3. Cost of living rises second. 4. The wealth gap widens further. In Switzerland, in Australia, in Canada, in South Korea. The same pattern repeats without exception. Housing becomes unaffordable. Wages stagnate. Asset owners grow wealthy beyond imagination. As John Maynard Keynes himself warned over a century ago, by a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate, secretly and unobserved, an important part of the wealth of their citizens. This is not a national issue. It is a global architecture of wealth extraction. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. So what can you do about all of this? First, understand that awareness is the most powerful weapon you have. The moment you understand how money really works, you stop being a passive victim. The system relies on your ignorance. It relies on you blaming corporations or the other political party instead of looking at the monetary system itself. As the Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises wrote, there is no means of avoiding the final collapse of a boom brought about by credit expansion. Awareness changes everything. Start measuring your wealth in dollars. Start measuring it in purchasing power. Understand that saving in cash alone means losing value every single year. Study the assets that historically preserve wealth against inflation. Real estate, if you can access it. Commodities, hard assets. The greatest financial education is understanding that the game is rigged and learning to position yourself accordingly. Talk about this, share this knowledge, because the system can only operate in the dark. An informed population is the only check on unlimited monetary expansion. They will keep printing. They will keep inflating asset prices. They will keep telling you inflation is temporary. IT isn't, but now you know. And knowledge once gained can never be taken away. If you made it this far, comment Cantillon Effect to prove you now see the wealth transfer they never taught you about. Follow the money, always. Every government lies. The question is, what are they lying about?